Okay, so if I've understood correctly, I'm going to try and give you a very high level, quick look at the capability we have here in the UK, how we coordinate it to deliver science projects. I'm going to touch on one of our key observing programs, and then I'm going to peer into the future and look at where that might align with some of the AMRIT activity. So a quick level of background: the UK has three large research vessels. We call them Royal Research Ships: Discovery, James Cook, and Sir David Attenborough. We've got two national equipment pools, and I say that because the main national equipment pool is based at the UK's National Oceanography Centre, and that is available to the entire community. But we do run an equipment pool very much focused on polar ops, and that's to do with logistics and the difficulty of retrieving equipment from that part of the world. We have other research vessels in the UK, but they're primarily focused on monitoring activities, so I won't deal with them in this presentation. And we have a slowly increasing use of marine autonomous systems. The two programs I'd mentioned in terms of observing systems would be Atlantis. I'll cover that in a bit more detail in a future slide. And then the British Antarctic Survey does support the Southern Ocean Observing System in two key areas based around where the British Antarctic Territory is. Just to note, funding for the infrastructure comes through UK Research and Innovation and then through the Natural Environment Research Council. The capability that is operated by the NOC or BAS is commissioned for anything up to 10 years. The capability operated by NOC is due to be recommissioned in 2028. And the final point, and I will touch on this again, is that UKRI has published an environmental sustainability strategy that says we should be net zero by 2040, and our research ships are major contributors to UKRI's emissions. They make up about 70% of NERC and about 40% of UKRI. Okay, coordination framework. We rely upon the Marine Facilities Programme website quite a lot. That's a bit of software developed in collaboration with NILES and with MASS Software Engineering. Scientists can apply to use the national capability if they have NERC-funded research, including NC, National Capability Activity like Atlantis, or if it's non-NERC funded but peer-reviewed or commissioned research. We aim to publish that program 8 months in advance. And one of the reasons for that is so that people can see what's coming up and see whether there's an opportunity to join or align with those programs. And I think I would stress within this presentation that planning element of activity and that ability to look and see what's coming up is a really critical element of bringing together infrastructures more effectively. The annual planning cycle for the infrastructure is guided by published criteria, which can be found on the NERC website. NERC-funded science and logistics is a priority. Then the non-NERC funded but peer-reviewed science follows on from that. That said, because it's a global program in some respects, so Atlantic, Southern Ocean, Pacific, opportunity, time efficiency, and cost effectiveness are factors that we take into account. Similarly, the limiting factors can often be either availability of equipment, particularly equipment like ROVs, or the supporting technicians and engineers. The coordination framework does include commitments to observation programs like the ones listed there. And again, to note that programs like the Elliott line have been using increasing numbers of autonomous systems recently. So the two programs themselves, the Cruise Program Executive Board meets twice a year. It oversees the implementation of the funding model so that we balance scientific and financial risks. It will decide on prioritization of research. It does get feedback from groups like our Cruise Program Review Group and our Marine Facilities Advisory Board. So those are the scientists telling us whether the capability is doing what they need it or not. And that executive board also has to consider that net zero target and how we will reach our interim carbon reduction targets. And that can be by spending more money buying slightly greener fuels or net zero fuels, or looking at delivering the science in a different way. Similarly, the Polar Research Operations Board will advise on the prioritization and planning. To note that that ship program does have to think about logistical support to the polar stations. The UK is also in halfway through a 30-year program to upgrade its infrastructure based down in Antarctica, and the ship is supporting that program as well. They get feedback from the scientists, and again, that board advises on how we reach that net zero target by 2040. Okay, I'll touch quickly on the Atlantis program, and I'm going to note 4 specific objectives that program seeks to focus on. One is drivers of basin and decadal changes and how they're altering the Atlantic ecosystem. The second is the importance of ocean, shelf, coastal, the importance of ocean, shelf, and coastal connectivity in shaping those ecosystems, natural hazards, and impact on security, the implications and feedbacks associated with climate mitigation strategies, and the ability of the ocean to continue to mitigate climate change by absorbing excess heat and carbon. Why spend time explicitly mentioning those objectives? Well, because the capability has to be fit for purpose to support the scientists in answering those questions and others. If I then turn to the future quickly, and the UK's Future Marine Research Infrastructure Programme, the James Cook end of design life is 2031, as noted there. Discovery a bit longer, but it takes about 7 or 8 years to build the business case to replace ships and then to actually build them. So you have to think way ahead. The FMRI program itself is aiming to develop or procure the capability to address those big science questions like I just mentioned now, harness cutting edge capability, but ensure that the UK's infrastructure is financially and environmentally sustainable. And it supports our forward looks that we are about to publish, which include green growth, environmental security, and by that we mean things like understanding what's happening to changes, for example, around the North Pole, or telecommunication cables, but also responsible innovation. So if we are going to use the ocean to try and take up a bit more carbon, how do we do that appropriately? FMRI very much looks to accelerate accessibility and interoperability of marine data. Again, that is coherent with wider investments across UKRI into that digital space. And I will close with just saying that from my perspective, I think FMRI is very closely aligned with the AMRIT objectives 1 to 3, particularly sensor development and integration into autonomous platforms, and has some coherence with AMRIT objective 4. I'll stop there because I believe there's times for questions after that quick presentation.